we are moving into an interesting subject, and this is on coalition politics. I mentioned that this is an interesting aspect in the Indian political history, and we have to go back to the first election scenario, and we are making a comprehensive study on everything. This is a comprehensive study. Since you are going for the Group 1 mains, it is a necessary aspect to know the fact in an analytical manner. So I am going into the deep-rooted historical subject that the first election held, organized heavily in the ending of 1951 and at the initial time of 1952. At that time, Sukumar Sen was the chief election commissioner. It was a big process. And according to Ramachandra Guha's The India After Gandhi, it was an interesting chapter. It was there in that book. In that big process, only one party was there from south to north and east to west. That party is Indian National Congress. No other alternative was there, existed at that time. Only Indian National Congress. So many parties were there with their name, but not the adequate popularity that the Indian National Congress getting. Those parties are Socialist Party and United Communist Party and of course Republican Party of India and one or two regional parties like Jharkhand Mukti Morcha. It was there at that time also. And at that time, Jansangh also emerged. Jansangh. It was there. The old name of today's Bharatiya Janata Party. No party got double digit. It was the situation at that time, and Congress emerged the largest party, having more than 370 seats out of 520. Jawaharlal Nehru was the tallest leader at that time. Nobody challenged his leadership. So it went off well. And after that, up to 1962, unchallenged, unparalleled leader was Jawaharlal Nehru. The China War took place. It was China's aggressive mood, backstabbing mentality of the China. Nehru, he depressed a lot, and he thought that his the preaching on peace and everything destroyed by the China's negative diplomacy and aggressiveness. And people challenged his leadership. In particular, opposition leaders like Ram Manohar Lohia challenged him. It was a fact that the leadership was weakened by several circumstances, in particular the losing the war with China in the year 1962. Okay, it was over, and Nehru took his last breath in the year 1969 May, perhaps on 20th, I think. And thereafter, Lal Bahadur Shastri became the Prime Minister. And the Congress Party's popularity and its strength in both houses of parliament intact. No other party challenged the Congress Party. Lal Bahadur Shastri's regime went off for 18 months and he gasped his last breath at Tashkent in the year 1966. Then came another Prime Minister, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, daughter of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. At that time, you have to remember, you have to identify that Mrs. Gandhi was not in a key position in the Lal Bahadur Shastri's government. She was I&B Minister, Information and Broadcasting. And this portfolio is not that like a finance or defense or home or commerce. She was a minister, but a cabinet minister, not a Lok Sabha member. She was representing the Rajya Sabha from UP to Rajya Sabha from UP. Of course, in the year 1966, Indira Gandhi became the third Prime Minister. It was in the historical books, Kuldeep Nair and others wrote that it was the master plan of the kingmaker Kamraj Nadar. However, history is there. It is in fact crystal clear that she ruled this country for more than 15 years. Okay, this is another chapter, another matter. Now, let me enter into the central focusing factor, that the coalition government, when it actually started in India. And I can tell you that in the year 1967, general election took place for the Lok Sabha. At that time, the unchallengeable and unparalleled Congress party, its strength became very lesser when comparing it with the 1962 Lok Sabha elections. It got just 260 plus seats in the strength of 520. Then started the coalition thought. And people rejected the Congress party. That was the statement of opposition party leaders. But it was not actually rejection, but the projection that we too have our parallel alternative opportunities to vote, not voting collectively to the Congress party. We may also vote for another party which is promising to give a very good life for us. This was the people's opinion. And at that time, one interesting phenomenon happened. In the year 1967, some UP-like key states went for its assembly elections. You know, UP was the key factor in the Indian politics since yesterday. You know, in the Nehru's once in a cabinet of Nehru, it was told that more than 80% ministers in the cabinet were from UP. And UP having 85 seats in the Lok Sabha is the biggest and mightiest state in Indian political scenario. So this in the 1967 assembly elections for UP, MP and other states in Punjab and of course in West Bengal, one interesting thing happened, that Congress not even achieved an absolute majority in any of these states. So then emerged other parties. For UP, you know, one party was Bharatiya Kisan Dal or Kranti Dal and Bharatiya Jan Sangh and other parties and one or two communist parties. All these parties emerged into one unit. It became a front, and the leader of this front became chief minister of that state, but not having absolute majority by his party. But one or two or three parties became friends and they created a front and they put the alternative to the Congress party and they met the governor and governor permitted them to take oath. Then they became chief ministers. No ideology, no principles, nothing, only power. And the second thing is that not to to give an opportunity for Congress party to take power. It was happened in 1967 assembly elections. You know, the Prime Minister who never visited the Parliament House, it was a record. That Prime Minister was Charan Singh, Chaudhary Charan Singh. He became the UP Chief Minister at that time. And some DP Mishra, the Chanakya of Madhya Pradesh politics, became Madhya Pradesh CM. And in West Bengal, some other parties, one or two parties, including Jan Sangh and Communist, became coalition partners. And they established their own this regime. And in Punjab also, Akali Dal was there, and with BJS and other parties, they took the power. This was the 1967. It was the pioneering and turning point in the history of coalition politics in India. Then what happened, you know? These governments collapsed nearer or before or just after 1969, because not having any continuing policies and ethics and principles, they started quarreling with each other for the power sharing and more powers, and it was an imbalanced administration. So these governments collapsed by their own mistakes, and otherwise the T56 article was imposed upon them. You know, this was the very biggest powerful article while dealing with the states at that time by the center. This was the failure story of the initial level of the coalition political parties, coalition governments, not coalition political parties, it was the governments. And this happened. The second thing, that the another history came in the year 1977 March. You know, emergency was imposed on our country by the Indira Gandhi government in the year 1975 May. This was imposed by the then Indira Gandhi government. And several critical criticisms are there on emergency, and few more appreciations also there. Because of the emergency, that India emerged as a secured nation, and without emergency, it was very much dangerous to even imagine the India's future. It was the version of the positive thinkers who supported the emergency. But many more voices are there that it was the dictatorial attitude of the rulers, and it was a nightmare experience for those people who are residing in North India. The negative commentators on emergency telling from that day to even today also. Even today also, they are remembering the nightmare experiences of the emergency days. Those happened in UP and Bihar and other states of North India. However, it is not the matter. In the year 1977, the emergency was lifted in the month January. Then came Lok Sabha elections. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister, and public opinion was so negative upon her government because of corruption, dictatorial attitude, policy paralysis, and not getting the adequate range of growth at economic level. And then came the Lok Nayak. He was Jayaprakash Narayan. He was an elderly statesman. He was very close to Nehru. And he thought he was a socialist. He was a Sarvodaya leader. He was a true Gandhian and a freedom fighter. And he advised all those fragmented political parties in the opposition to unite, except communists, to make a fight against Indira Gandhi's regime at that time. Otherwise, he advised that you can't emerge. This is the right time to unite yourselves. Then, by his preachings, I mentioned now that he was an elderly man in that Indian political scenario. They came over and they accepted to de-idealize themselves. They adapted only one ideology, that they must make a united fight to dethrone the then government, and then the achieving the power at the right time and giving a very good administration to the people of India who suffered a lot by the emergency and other factors. So then BJS, as I told you, BJS, Bharatiya Janata Sangh, it was led by Advani and Vajpayee. They are towering personalities of this party. And Babu Jagjivan Ram, he was a great leader. He was cabinet minister for more than 4 decades. He was a freedom fighter. And he quit the Congress party before the Lok Sabha elections. So he established his own Congress, his own group. It was Congress for Democracy, CFD. And this Charan Singh party and other socialist groups all came together on one dais, and it became one party. Its name is Janata Party. With one symbol, with one ideology, with one motto, these strongest leaders like Morarji Desai, Hemawati Nandan Bahuguna, Lal Krishna Advani, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and H.M. Patel, Charan Singh, and all these leaders came onto one dais and they fought unitedly to win the election in 1977. And the Janata Party, it was a miracle in Indian political history that it got the absolute majority by getting 285 seats. And they formed the government under the leadership of Morarji Desai. He was a stalwart at that time, and he was an eminent political leader and a statesman. And he even led the united Mumbai state, which was now bifurcated as Gujarat and Maharashtra in the year 1960. He was chief minister before that united Mumbai state, it was called at that time. And he was finance minister for, he submitted more than 10 budgets at that time in the center. So he became the prime minister. This is of course not technically not a coalition government, but at the quality level, at the qualitative level, it was a coalition government. This was the first experiment. And what happened? It was a failure story, not a successful story. Because of Charan Singh, his dream project was to become the Prime Minister of India. What the hell? At that moment, he was Home Minister. And his experience in the past is confined to his own state, that was UP, and even confined to his own area, that was Western UP. Agriculturally progressive area. And his dream was to become Prime Minister of India. So, this gentleman started his own politics within existing in the cabinet. It is a wrong thing. It is unethical. Not resigning from the government, existing in the cabinet and making destabilization politics, it's a wrong thing. But he indulged that. And then Morarji Desai resigned his prime minister post in the 1979 July. And this Charan Singh started his own group, that is what the Lok Dal, with 100 ad members. George Fernand and others joined in that group. Yes, it happened. Then President of India, Neelam Sanjeev Reddy, invited this Charan Singh to form the government. Congress came onto the dais and they told that not joining in the government, we are going to support Mr. Charan Singh and his Lok Dal party. So political leaders and people and even the president of that time, a senior statesman, Sanjeev Reddy garu, also everyone thought that this government will be stabilized by the external support given by the Congress party. It was also a coalition government. But before taking the vote of confidence, before its initial performance only, this party, Congress party, withdrawn its support to the Charan Singh government. What went wrong, we don't know. It was its inner political strategy. Then this Charan Singh government collapsed. Okay. This was another failure story of the coalition government. One, Morarji Desai. Second was Charan Singh. Then people also never supported these type of coalition governments because the financial growth will be reduced and the political, political stabilization and the security strengthening, all things must be mentioned, all things must be discussed a lot because of the security and the internal security and external security and also financial development. These are all important concerns from a small citizen to a mightiest intellectual, isn't it? They all hated and they all rejected these kind of coalition politics. Then in the year 1980, midterm elections came. In those elections, Indira Gandhi's Congress party became a triumphant political wing by getting 380 seats. And then coalition politics went into a back seat. Unparalleled and unchallengeable party, Congress, it formed the government. Okay? And the tragic thing took place in the year 1984, October 31st. A great Prime Minister, a great determined decision maker, Srimati Indira Gandhi garu, assassinated by her own guards. It was a tragic incident. It was a very, very much tragic that a Prime Minister like Indira Gandhi got this kind of this tragic ending. Okay. Then came 1984 Lok Sabha elections. The sympathy wave emerged like anything. It was a tsunami. Indira Gandhi garu, she was a great leader. She was assassinated by her own guards. This type of sympathy, it was like a tsunami. Then in that sympathetic wave, Congress party got 411 seats, which was not achieved even in the period of Nehru. Then Rajiv Gandhi became Prime Minister in the year 1984. He was Prime Minister for 5 years. It was a stabilized government because they got 411 seats for the Lok Sabha. At that time, Bharatiya Janata Party got only 2 seats and Janata Party got 3 seats. And another party, Lok Dal, got some 11 or 12 seats, or not less than that. It was the story at that time.